right, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the show. This is the Frankly Fantasy Football Podcast, fantasy football for your average Joe. I am your host, Frankie, and you might be asking, well, whoa, wait a second, where the hell's Johnny? Let me tell you guys, Johnny is in Germany doing German things. Actually, he is there on business and is just tearing it up, man, having a great time. And John, we miss you this week, but for those listening, we had to hold down the fort. Now, Johnny will be back next week, but for this week, we have a wonderful show coming for you to really dive into a lot of interesting topics, a fireside chat, news and notes, and much, much more. So with that being said, would love to dive in. Hopefully everybody had a fantastic weekend, except for us Browns fans who just continue to be miserable, but that's a side note, okay? So hopefully your fantasy teams are doing well. I want to start off and thanking every single person for those following us on social media, subscribing to us, and really liking and sharing our posts, guys. It is much appreciated. So with that being said, follow us on social media on Facebook and Instagram at Frankly Fantasy Football, on Twitter at Frankly Fantasy F, and on YouTube. Smash that bell and continue to subscribe, folks, at Frankly Fantasy Football. So with this episode, it is being brought to us by Calspra Employee Recruitment Services. So for those of you owning a business, are you tired of staffing companies charging high hourly rates to recruit subpar employees for your business? Well, Calspra Employee Recruitment Services sets you up with a program that sustains a constant flow of new recruits coming to your door. How they do it? It's simple. They had to. Calspra has owned a manufacturing business since 1989. And when the employee crisis hit, they came up with a system with proven results. There's no hourly fees for employees they bring to your business. It's just one flat fee to get you real results. For more information, call now at 330-584-7759 and use the promo code Frankie and Johnny to get you a free consultation. Let me repeat that, guys. If you are a business owner or interested or tired of staffing companies charging high hourly rates to recruit subpar employees for your business, call now at 330-584-7759 and use the promo phrase Frankie and Johnny to get you a free consultation for your business to see how Calspra Employee Recruitment Services can set you up with a program that sustains a constant flow of new recruits coming to your door. All right, everyone. So again, as I mentioned, we're definitely going to be having an interesting and a different type of episode today. We're going to start off with a fireside chat with Fireside Chats with Frankie. And so within this, guys, what I really want to hit on is just a few tips, right? We're in week 7 right now. How crazy is that? Week 7 of this fantasy season. So, Johnny and I had really done a lot of work and preparation for everybody in terms of what to do at draft time, what to do after draft time. And even last year, if you remember, we talked about right before the playoffs. So in the middle of this season, we want to give you some tips and tricks of the trade. That way you can understand what to do with your teams right now, especially if you're in that 2-4, 3-3, 1-5 spot, to really give you a chance heading into the back end of this season. All right, let's dive in here. So first and foremost, folks, we're talking waiver wire tactics. And so what I wanted to hit on was dropping your kicker ahead of time, or dropping a few individuals ahead of time before you're looking to pick up others on the waiver. The reason being is because you're able, for instance, if you take away your kicker, you're able to add an additional bench spot, right? And so for that bench spot, you can add in an additional running back, receiver to really give your depth a little bit more robustness heading into the weekend. Now, obviously, you're going to have to drop one of those players, right? One of those players that you just picked up, or maybe somebody that's been on your team. But the reason why you do this is because throughout the week, what happens if one of your players gets injured? Or what happens if, for instance, a Melvin Gordon or something crazy like a Latavius Murray ends up getting traded? And so now you've already picked them up rather than having to wait with all the craziness going on of people that eventually are going to try and pick up that player. So what we're getting at is put yourself in a position to where you can drop some of these players like that of your kicker, and maybe even some early, individuals that you just don't see panning out on your team. That way you can start leveraging additional players, bring in a whole new slew of team to, again, give you that higher level of depth. Next tip, guys, is on Thursday nights, make sure you are taking the players that are playing on your Thursday nights out of your flex spots. Let me repeat that. If you have players playing in on a Thursday night game, take them out of your flex. The reason being is because the way some teams are created, okay, you might actually need that flex spot to be maybe a running back or maybe a receiver, right? And so you might not have that ability if, for instance, if you have a player playing on that Thursday night in the flex when you could have just switched them into a running back or a receiver spot. The other thing that this does for you is it gives you a little bit of insurance. What I mean by that is if one of your players were to get hurt throughout the week on a Friday or a Saturday that are currently in that running back or receiver spot, now you have the ability to plug and play within your flex, right? Because again, we're moving our flex player into that spot. So it gives you a little bit more ability to move and work within your team. Guys, the last big tip here that I really, really, really want to nail home is we need to start trading. You need to be making moves. The more and more you're stagnant, the higher likely it is that your team is going to be stagnant. And yeah, you're going to have, if you drafted really well, if you have deep benches, right, that's all fine and dandy. But what you need to be doing is packaging up together some of these different players. So maybe a couple tier 2, maybe a tier 1, throw them in and package them together for a superstar. These are the types of trades. And really, if you're in those positions of maybe a 4-1, 5-0, 6-0, right, whatever that looks like, then you need to be targeting teams that maybe are willing and are more open to trading at this point in time, like those of the 1-5s, 2-4s, 3-3s, et cetera, because they need to make moves to get into the playoffs. They're thinking ahead. If you are one of those teams, unfortunately, it just is what it is. I am one of those teams in one of my leagues, even though I'm the third highest point guy. Very frustrating, right? But if you are one of those teams, guys, what you need to be doing is, again, packaging up a 2-for-1, a 3-for-1, right? Trying to give the additional player that you're trading with a really nice startable piece, another nice flex piece, and then a depth piece, something like that, to get a really good player that you can get value in right now. Because if you're in those positions, guys, your playoff hopes are really, really dwindling. You need to make moves now. So, guys, what I'm getting at is don't be the lazy manager. You need to plan for bye weeks coming up, a week or two ahead. With those coming, those are hitting right now, right? We have week 7 bye weeks here, right? With the Rams, the Bills, right? The Eagles, huge fantasy value. Plan ahead now, make a few trades, add individuals on your waiver wire, right? And make this happen. Guys, check the injury reports as well before game time. I know I'm throwing a lot at you here, but trust me when I say this, it is going to set you up for success. So let's check out this video. Don't be like this guy and a lazy manager.
Dude, taking you down this week in fantasy.
Not too worried about it. Noticed you had 3 empty slots in your roster.
Oh! Can't believe I didn't update my lineup. Stupid Sunday deadline. I never wake up in time. How do Aaron Rodgers and Ray Rice have a bye week on the same week? This is ridiculous.
Oh, God. Don't be that lazy manager, guys. And by the way, if you're still starting or thinking about Ray Rice and bye weeks, you have a bit more problem than just the bye week alone. So, guys, I hope you enjoyed this fireside chat with Frankie. I'll tell you what. Let's dive into some news and notes here. Let's really get into the meat and potatoes of what's going on.
The season 2000 yards just doesn't expect absolutely lost. Football.
News and notes.
All right, guys, we got a lot to get to here. So really going to do a nice rundown. stay with me and let's review this together and start planning ahead with these injuries and updated news. First and foremost, guys, we're looking at Randall Cobb. He's set to miss 2 to 4 weeks with a sprain. Unfortunately, with an already decimated Green Bay Packers team, just from a pure play perspective, this is going to be a pretty big hit to them. So really what this does for me, guys, is I'm really looking at Romeo Doubs. I'm looking at Christian Watson if he can get healthy, if Sammy Watkins ever gets off IR, but really Aaron Jones might see an uptick, especially after that ass beating that they took against the New York Jets at home. So Randall Cobb is set to miss 2 to 4 weeks with the sprain. Plan accordingly there. Melvin Gordon benched after 3 carries. Guys, if you were watching this Monday night game and you have Melvin Gordon, I'm thinking this is gold. This is a beautiful setup. It's going to be a nice tandem between him and Latavius. Mike Boone's going to come in here and be a nice change of pace guy. No, that was not the case. Guys, Melvin Gordon was literally benched after 3 carries. Latavius then got the bulk of the load, 16 carries. What this is telling me is stay close on this. I think that Melvin Gordon could be positioned right now to be traded or potentially dropped. So, guys, really, really interesting stuff going on in Denver. Obviously, the team as a whole isn't doing really well. All right. Rams are trying to trade Cam Akers. You heard that. Rams are done with Cam Akers and are ready to move on to have a fresh new face. And so whether that's Henderson, whether they look to make a trade for CMC, which would be crazy, or another running back, could be Gordon, right? Could be Melvin Gordon. It doesn't matter. Cam Akers is out. So for those of you that have Cam Akers, you might want to hold on to him or potentially look to trade him and try to get some value out of it because he is going to be no longer a Los Angeles Ram. Keenan Allen is hoping to return in week 7 after being gone for a while. I can tell you this much, the Chargers desperately need his help on the outside. He will be welcomed with open arms to that of Justin Herbert. Another big injury here, folks. Carson Wentz likely out 4 to 6 weeks. Now, he is going and getting a second opinion on a few things. However, it was ruled today by Ron Rivera, came out. Taylor Heineke is going to be getting the start. You heard me. Taylor Heine, he will be back in action. He was 7-8 last year as a starter, had 20 touchdowns with 15 interceptions. So could be interesting, but needless to say, this is going to be a blow. Even though Carson Wentz wasn't having the greatest last few weeks, he was still an upgrade over Heineke. So yeah, this is a tough one if you're a Washington Commanders fan or even potentially have some of those Commanders players. Another big loss, guys. Marquise Brown may miss up to 6 weeks or more. He is also getting a second opinion on it because of a foot injury. This is not looking good. Okay, and the reason why I say this is because they ended up, the Cardinals, right? So Marquise Brown is, for those of you who don't know, is the receiver for the Cardinals. They actually just traded for Robbie Anderson. Rondale Moore is performing really well. So for Marquise Brown, it's not looking good. Could be a season-ending kind of injury. So that's probably why they brought on Robbie Anderson. Again, you have DeAndre Hopkins coming back after a PED suspension for Week 7, which is huge news, which the Cardinals will definitely, be excited to get him back into the fold. So, but yeah, unfortunately, Marquise Brown, guys, you're probably going to want to bench him, put him in your IR spot. Depending on what the news comes out, you might even look to drop him. So big hit for the Cardinals. Russell Wilson has now an injured hamstring. Team is still unsure how severe, but guys, he's just not playing well. He has had some lat issues, a lat tear. He's now has hamstring issues. Last year, we saw him with the finger issues, which needed surgery. This is just really bad for the Broncos. So between the Melvin Gordon stuff, Russell Wilson, Nathaniel Hackett kind of, hacking his way through the season this far. Not super great. So keep an eye on Russell Wilson. Will be TBD what happens with him moving forward. All right. The good news is Tua Tua Tagovailoa is expected to play week 7. He has cleared concussion protocol, so the Dolphins are excited to get him back into action. Trust me, I know Teddy Bridgewater did a fine job, but Tua is going to be the guy moving forward. So Dolphins fans have to be happy from that perspective. All right, guys, let's go to the next tier. Baker will have to compete for the starting job when he returns from injury, says interim coach Steve Wilks. Guys, I think that the Panthers are going to go into a fire sale type of situation. They're not really sure what the hell's going on, how to really move forward at this point in time. I mentioned Robbie Anderson going to the Cardinals, getting traded there. If you saw on the sideline, Robbie Anderson was kind of all over the place, yelling at the coach. Baker gets injured. Matt Rule gets fired. Everything's up in the air. DJ Moore's been underperforming. It's just kind of a mess. So with Baker now having to be in a quarterback competition, this is going to be extremely interesting moving forward. Good news on the Cowboys front here. Dak Prescott to be cleared to play and will return to practice on Wednesday. So huge news after what Cooper Rush has done, which has been fantastic. It's going to be great to get Dak back into play. Obviously, Dak is for the most part, has a more talent base or is more athletic, should I say, than that of Cooper Rush. So it'll be good to see Dak get back into the swing of things. I definitely think this could elevate Zeke a bit. I think this could continue to elevate CeeDee Lamb and potentially others on that team. So look out for Dak Attack making his debut here after a few weeks not playing, and he is expected to play this week. All right, guys, regarding the Steelers, Kenny Pickett left the game with a concussion, and there is no word on a timetable for return. So definitely want to stay involved in that. Mr. Trubisky did come in, and he did play well, but Kenny Pickett, for the most part, looked damn good in that game against Tampa. By the way, Steelers won that game. Last but not least, our boy, the massage, Deshaun Watson, another lawsuit. What the fuck? What the fuck? This is just getting outrageous. This is just like who else? Anybody else want to come forth? And this is just, guys, enough said. I'll leave it at that. We'll see what happens. Don't know if the NFL is going to change their ruling. Don't know what's going to happen from the court of law side of things. I'm just here reporting the news. Needless to say, with all of the concussions, the sexual misconduct, the assault, we must at this point, you just need to change the scoring point system in fantasy football. Check this out.
All right, listen up. This year we're changing the rules. Teams are allowed 2 quarterbacks, and there will now be a slot for defensive players, which will get you points on sacks and interceptions.
Ooh, okay, Richard Sherman, here I come.
We will also now be deducting points if your player is caught with performance-enhancing drugs. And you'll get docked points if your player is publicly outed for beating their wife twice in a season. But you'll be awarded 500 points if a player dies due to a traumatic brain injury.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Game on. Goodell don't care.
How bad is that? That is so bad, but that is pretty funny. I'm not going to lie, with a lot of this stuff going on. All right, guys. Well, you know what time it is. It is time for Frankie and Johnny's Song of Ice and Fire. All right. So, guys, there was a lot of really shitbag performances this week. I mean, it was brutal. There was a lot of guys on ice. And so I'm going to really go through these and talk through them a bit. So first and foremost, MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, okay? 0 receptions on 3 targets, which, do you know what that equates to in fantasy football terms and points? That is a big goose egg. MVS, you are on ice. And guys, moving forward, this is going to be the type of guy that is boom or bust. Johnny and I have said it multiple times. Boom or bust throughout the entire year. All right, another guy on ice here. We had DJ Moore. DJ Moore continues to ride the struggle bus. And it's, I feel bad for the guy between the coaches getting fired and multiple quarterbacks. And now your main quarterback is injured. Now he's going to be at a quarterback competition with 2 other guys. And it's just a mess right now. So, guys, DJ Moore was 3 receptions on 7 targets for 7 yards. That equates to 2 points. DJ Moore, you're on ice, my man. All right, so I'm going to lump these 3 in together. This was a bit shocking for me. And with the one guy, I kind of put my money on a bit, and he didn't perform absolutely terribly, depending on how your fantasy point system is actually set up. But it was pretty rough overall. Well, I'm talking about Geno Smith, DK Metcalf, and Tyler Lockett. All 3 really shit the bed. Geno Smith was 20 for 31, 197 yards, 6 carries for 48 yards, 1 fumble, 5 sacks. Guys, this equates to under 7 points in leagues that, again, would take sacks into consideration. For most other leagues, he was middle of the road between 11 and 17 points. But for those that take sacks into consideration, this was brutal. On top of that, you had DK Metcalf. He was 2 for 7 for 34 yards with 4 points. And Tyler Lockett, 2 receptions on 5 targets for 17 yards, which equates to under 3 points. Guys, really rough day for the Seattle Seahawks passing game. Really rough day for DK and Tyler Lockett. You 3 are on ice. All right, let's jump into a few others here. So we have Curtis Samuel. He only had 2 receptions on 5 targets for 6 yards, under 2 points. Again, yes, I know Carson Wentz went out and all these other things, but my God, that sucks when you have to put him in. You're putting your name on him, and he drops an egg like that. Guys, I mentioned him before, Melvin Gordon. Yep, you heard it right. 3 rushing attempts for 8 yards, less than a point. Really bad. Probably won't even be a Denver Bronco within the next week. We also have Michael Gallup here. So he's been working his way back from injuries, guys, but he was on ice this week. Michael Gallup was 2 for 7. So he had 2 receptions on 7 targets for 18 yards, which equates to under 3 points. So really, really rough week for Michael Gallup. In addition, I'm going to lump in a few others here, guys. We had Jeff Wilson and Kareem Hunt. Jeff Wilson was 7 rushing attempts for 25 yards and 1 fumble, which equates to negative points. Negative. And Kareem Hunt, 4 rushes for 12 yards and 1 point. Really, really tough sledding for guys that have, put them in lineups. That sucks. Kareem and Jeff, you are on ice, sir. And then these last 2, these were both a little surprising. These were both from Monday night. I know I talked about Gordon, etc., but Justin Herbert, how about that, guys? He threw the ball 57 times and completed only 37 of them for only 238 yards. He had 1 interception and was sacked twice for 7 points. And guys, Cortland Sutton on the other end of the ball there. 2 receptions on 3 targets for 14 points, which equates to for 14 yards, which equates to 2 points. My God. So Cortland Sutton and Justin Herbert, you are on ice. And for those of you who played these guys or had a few of them, I know I did. You feel like this kid, right? Like this kid at the end of this clip. Just watch it. You'll know what I'm talking about.
Wearing number 1 for the Los Angeles Traffic today is 9-year-old Tommy Douglas. Tommy has lived most of his life in the hospital after being born with a potato for a heart and will undergo a heart transplant surgery next weekend. He's about as big of a Traffic fan as they come, so in partnership with the Grant-A-Wish Foundation, both teams have agreed to come together and have Tommy run the first play of the game. And he got the handoff, and there he goes. Made a little cutback move, and it looks like he's going to go all the way. Look at him go. Wow. This is really one of those heartwarming moments in sports where you just... Oh! Oh, my God! That is not good.
So for those of you who are just listening in, this clip was basically this kid that had a breakaway. It was granted, which was really beautiful. And it was a breakaway touchdown. And one of the defenders comes up and smacked him. And so that's how you probably felt, knowing that your team started one of these guys. Really, really rough. So let's move on. Let's go into some of the fire here. So some of the guys that performed way above what they should have, or probably, have done for most of their time. So let's jump into it. Joe Burrow on fire. Highest point scorer of the week with 37 fantasy points, guys. He had one hell of a game. He threw the ball 37 times. He completed 29 of those for 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, and then added a rushing touchdown with 35 yards rushing. Joe Burrow, hats off to you. You were on fire. All right, I'm going to lump together another 2 quarterbacks here because these guys were really fun to watch this week. My champion, Matt Ryan, on fire. He was 42 for 58, guys. Matt Ryan almost threw the ball 60 times for 389 yards, 3 touchdowns, which equates to 34 points. Matt Ryan, hell of a job, baby. And the other guy I wanted to lump in here was Marcus Mariota. Marcus Mariota, guys, was 13 for 14, very efficient for only 129 yards, but he did throw 2 touchdowns. Here's where he got his payday. 50 yards rushing and an additional touchdown. Guys, this equates to 26 fantasy points from Marcus Mariota. So in a double quarterback league, if you were able to start Mariota as that second quarterback, you were sitting really nice. All right. These next few I'm going to lump in together as well. They're coming from Bills Mafia, going fucking crazy this week, beating the Chiefs at the Chiefs. I'm talking about Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. Those 2 guys continue to perform week in and week out. Josh Allen threw the ball 40 times. He was 27 for 40, 329 yards and 3 touchdowns. He also had 12 rushes for 32 yards, which equates to 31 fantasy points. Holy hell. Josh Stallion, you were beautiful out there, brother. And throwing to, as I mentioned, Stephon Diggs. 10 receptions, 148 yards, and 1 touchdown, which was 27 points. Stephon Diggs to Josh Allen is something that we're going to hear for a very, very long time. All right. The next guy I wanted to bring up is Jamar Chase. Welcome to the fucking show, man. It is good to see you putting up double-digit touchdowns. 7 receptions, 132 yards, 2 touchdowns, which equates to 31 fantasy points out of Jamar. Guys, I love Jamar moving forward. Joe Burrow's feeling really comfortable. There's been injuries with T. Higgins, injuries with Hayden Hurst, so on and off. This is a guy that I think is going to continue to be a top 5 guy moving forward for the rest of the year. All right, and the last on fire team player, New York Jets defense. Absolutely crazy. Got excited, knocked over my picture. Holy shit. Guys, the New York Jets defense here with 25 points at Green Bay. What a feat for that team, that young team that Robert Saleh continues to put in great positions. So hats off to these guys that were just on fire, man. With these guys being on fire, you're going to want to check this out. Look at this.
What the hell are you doing?
I wanted to bring over something to welcome Gronk to the neighborhood, so I scraped all the Cool Ranch off of 15 bags of Doritos.
You bringing him a bowl of powder?
Yeah, I thought he could eat it by the fistful or rub it on his balls.
Peter, I don't know what you're so excited about. Rob Gronkowski is probably the worst neighbor we could ask for. You know he's going to be partying day and night. It's not like it's that tasty piece of ass, Julian Edelman. Now there's a Patriot you can get excited about. I know he's a wide receiver, but if he's given, I'm taking. I'll take it all. I'll take it wherever. Anyway, go suck up to your big dumb monster. I'll be here hooking the G to thoughts of Edelman.
So if you had some of those guys on fire, you were feeling like Lois there, just cracking open some beer, talking about Julian Edelman, putting it all over your face and having a good ass time. So guys, again, Fire and Ice segment wrapping up. Great job if you were able to have some of those guys on fire. A little bit tough if you had some on ice. Let's move on here. Move into the waiver wire edition. So really, guys, want to focus on those for this week you want to really prioritize in picking up. So again, spend some money on a few of these guys. It might be worth it. The one that I think that is definitely going to be worth it, at least for the short term, is going to be that of Kenyon Drake. Guys, JK is still experiencing some leg tightness and is not 100% from his injury by any means. I do understand as well, Gus Bus. Ready? Gus Edwards is coming back and he's starting back up again. But the thing is Drake could be an interesting hold candidate. So what I would do is I would really put some dollars, especially a bid, maybe 10%, etc., on that of Kenyon Drake. Just because of the way he performed, guys. He had over 100 yards rushing on just 10 rushes and a touchdown. Really performed well this week. So again, it is going to be a rotating, a running back by committee here. So, take it for what it's worth. But again, if JK still isn't right, Gus Edwards is coming off a massive injury himself. Kenyon Drake might be sneaky towards the back half of the year. All right. Excuse me. Another guy here, Deion Jackson. Wow. What a freaking game this guy has had this past week for the Colts. He had a huge game with Jonathan Taylor out. But the thing is Jonathan Taylor is going to be making a comeback. So I would not be spending a lot of money on this guy. Now, however, I am willing to spend something on him because I do think he's a true handcuff from what we've seen in the 2-game sample size for that of Jonathan Taylor. So guys, again, Colts are looking to play at Tennessee this week. And it could be interesting again if Jonathan Taylor is out. All right. The next waiver wire addition that I would look to add is somebody who's a Hail Mary. Okay. Malcolm Brown versus San Fran on week 8. Not even this week. Week 8, because the Rams are on a bye. Malcolm Brown is interesting because Cam Akers is no longer going to be anywhere remotely close to being a Ram, or at least on the field playing. So they're definitely looking to move on from him, which means that Henderson obviously should be rostered on all levels. But 2 is definitely going to need a backup here. And it seems like the synergy between what Brown and Sean McVay have had prior to this, it really seems like a nice marriage for a backup role. So if Henderson, who has been shaky with injuries prior, ends up actually getting injured again, guys, he could be very, very, very interesting moving forward. So again, this is a Hail Mary for right now. Week 8, they're on bye week this week, but it might be interesting. Again, things could change. They trade for Melvin Gordon, trade for another piece. Obviously, that changes the dynamic. But until then, it could be an interesting pickup. All right. Another waiver wire addition is Robert Tonyan. So Robert Tonyan, he's had 16 targets in the last 2 weeks. So he had a blow-up week this week and was just absolutely phenomenal. The issue is that he's extremely inconsistent. And so I think that he could be finding his stride now with Aaron Rodgers. We saw, we talked about Cobb going down. Things are really not all together there with Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. Romeo Doubs is still, a rookie with Christian Watson being hurt. So there's a lot of uncertainty happening in this Packers organization from a player personnel perspective. So Robert Tonyan could be an interesting player heading down the back half of the year. So I would be definitely willing to put a little bit of money on him, especially after that performance that he had with Aaron Rodgers. And the last pickup is, again, very, very interesting. And this is a deep pool, guys. Ben Skowronek. Okay, so versus San Fran, week 8. Again, he's playing. He's a receiver there, the third receiver, actually technically the fourth receiver on the Rams. And what's interesting, and this is for deep leagues, but this guy could absolutely be rostered at this point in time. 3 out of the 6 first weeks. So he's had over 7 points in half PPR. He's also ranked number 44 for total receivers, guys. 44th in all receivers in fantasy football for half PPR. That is way ahead of his counterpart, Allen Robinson, who is ahead of him in the depth chart. Now, I understand Van Jefferson hasn't been involved yet, things like that. But right now, Ben Skoranek is not only getting targets, he's also getting rushing efforts. And so if this is a little bit of a mini Cooper Kupp in the making, again, that's a huge leap what I'm saying there. But follow with me for a second. If there's even a fraction, a 16th of what that is, guys, he's absolutely should be rostered and at least held on to for the time being. So again, Ben Skoranek, very interesting pool, guys. But that about wraps up those waiver wire additions for this coming week and into that next week. So with that being said, I think you know what time it is. I think we need to get into a little bit of hit it and quit it. I want you to hit it. You know, the only time I jam like this, Johnny makes fun of me every single time because I enjoy dancing and I'm a terrible dancer. I'm goofy as hell. Give me a couple beers and I'm rocking it out. I'm feeling saucy. Okay. But the only other really outside of a few, right, the bands that I really rock to is the one that I'm going to tilt this camera down just a tad. And what you can see here is I'm rocking the Plume. I'm rocking the Plume shirt. So shout out to Anthony Sistone, Ben Birch, and those at the Plume band. Guys, check them out. Psychedelic rock band taking over Denver, really doing big things. Shout out Plume. All right, guys, let's get into the hit it and quit it here. So I want to do a little look back of what happened last week. So John's hit it's from last week were Jeff Wilson at Atlanta and A.J. Dillon versus the New York Jets. So I mentioned Jeff Wilson, kind of shit the bed. Not kind of, definitely shit the bed. So not a really great hit it. He had negative 0.5 points, but A.J. Dillon had 7 points. Not terrible, middle of the road. You're definitely looking for double digits. Sorry, John. But let's look at Frankie's hit it's. I had Breece Hall at Green Bay. Tough pool against a tough defense, had 20 points this week. And then Chris Godwin at Pittsburgh had 13 points in half PPR. So guys, if you ended up firing up those 2 players, you were feeling real good about your decisions there. So let's get into Johnny's first hit it here. So let me make this a little bit bigger. Johnny's first hit it is actually Breece Hall this week. So he's looking at Breece Hall playing at the Broncos here. He's had over 20 touches in the last 3 games in each game. Think about that. Breece Hall, 20 touches in each game for the last 3 games. He's been great in receiving. In the last 3 weeks, guys, he's had 15 points, 28 points, and 20 points in fantasy football. He's also having nearly 70% snap count in the last 3 games. So he's an absolute must start. He's probably a top 7 running back where it stands right now. And guys, with 22 touches for 121 yards and 1 touchdown versus the Packers, this guy going to the Broncos and just knowing what Austin Eckler did, it's going to be pretty ugly. So Johnny, love this hit it, man. I think you knocked it out of the damn park. All right. For my hit it here, we're going to go with Zeke Elliott. Zeke. Oh shit. Here we go. We got a bit of a siren. You know what that means, guys. With Zeke, this is what we're hitting on. We're going to sell him high after what happened last week. So he had a big bounce back against Philly. It was kind of unexpected, right? He had 13 rushes for 81 yards and a touchdown. He had 16 points. So it wasn't a very great game. It was a good game. It was a nice bounce back. So the reason why I'm saying sell him high is because we've seen what Tony Pollard's done. We've also seen what Zeke has done prior to this game. This is the perfect opportunity for bye weeks happening with the Rams, with the Philadelphia Eagles and especially with the Bills for the Singletaries and Hendersons and others to really look to trade Zeke to maybe one of those teams, guys. Sell him high, get him out of there and get something worth of value that's going to be a little more consistent potentially down the stretch. All right. So going back to Johnny's here, Johnny's last hit it is that of Jacoby Myers. Jacoby Myers. And here we go. We got the siren going off again. Buy him in PPR, folks. So Jacoby Myers versus the Bears this week with 20. Last week in the last 3 games, he's had 25 targets. He's had 20 receptions on those 25 targets. 266 yards and 1 touchdown. And that is all within the last 3 games he's played. Guys, Chicago's secondary is terrible. Mac Jones potentially is going to be back. But honestly, with what we saw with Blake Zappi, the dude can sling the ball. For those of you who don't know, I'm not going to give Bailey, not Blake. Bailey Zappi a little bit. I'm going to give him a little bit of credit. For those of you who don't know, he actually set the record for the most passing yards in FBS history. And I believe he either tied or surpassed Joe Burrow with 62 touchdown passes in a season. And so what he did at Western Michigan, now, yes, it was Western Mich, but the thing is we're seeing that he can still perform in the NFL. Again, rookie coming in, throwing over 300 yards this past week. Pretty sexy. So, guys, Jacoby Myers is a very, very good start against a very, very decimated and just down Bears team. All right. The last my hit it here is going to be Michael Pittman Jr. Guys, fire him up and feel damn good about it. Michael Pittman Jr. is playing at Tennessee. At Tennessee this week. And here's the thing. Last week, he had 13 receptions on 16 targets. He had 134 yards, 22 fantasy points. Last time he played Tennessee, he only had 6 points. The difference is, I believe that was week 3. The difference is this team is starting to click. I think with Jonathan Taylor potentially coming back, Matt Ryan is figuring out how to work with his receivers. He's figuring out the ins and outs of the flow with Alec Pierce, as well as Michael Pittman Jr., as well as his tight ends with Mo Alley Cox and Woods. So, guys, I really do I'm smashing the start and everywhere possible. Michael Pittman Jr., even in DFS, guys, I think this could be really interesting. All right. So let's go to some quit-its. So the quit-its were a little bit interesting as well from last week. So last week, I'll start off with myself. So I hit on one and I'm a little bit shaky on the other. So my quit was Elijah Moore at Green Bay. Haven't felt the love with Elijah Moore. He feels lost this year in this offense. I think it's primarily due to that of the, acquiring, Garrett Wilson. Corey Davis continues to perform well. And then obviously it's very, very simple, the addition of Breece Hall. So Elijah Moore at Green Bay had 0 points. So I nailed that. The one that I'm a little bit sketchy on is Zeke. I actually quit Zeke this week. He was at Philly, wasn't feeling the love, especially after the performance that Tony Pollard had just put on. Guys, Zeke had 15 points in half PPR. He's definitely, that would have been great to start him or at least have that in the flex spot. For me, I quit it. Sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. And so for me, got hit a little hard on that one. But for Johnny over here, this was cool. So he actually had Antonio Gibson against Chicago for 7 points, who had 7 points, and Chase Edmonds versus Minnesota for 4 points. So Johnny, fantastic job, good sir. You really, really hit it hard with them and hit him good on those quit-its. So let's go to some quit-its this week. So looking at from my perspective, I'm going with Scary Terry. And this is really unfortunate, guys. This is my number one quit-it. If you have Terry McLaurin on your team, it's concerning, right? Because he had 3 receptions on 4 targets for 41 yards and 6 points. I am thinking this is going to be, versus Green Bay. Green Bay is going to have a bounce back week. I do not see them not having a bounce back week, especially that defense that got ran all over against the New York Jets. I really see them cracking down. In addition to this, I had mentioned Carson Wentz is no longer playing for at least the next 4 to 6 weeks, which means Taylor Heineke is now taking over. Now, there is some synergy there, but for me, it's just too much to handle. I am quitting on Scary Terry this week. All right, guys. Johnny's first quit it here is Melvin Gordon versus the Jets. Johnny, I completely agree with you, brother. He is way too risky. He's probably going to get traded. Guys, the reason being is because he is fumbling risks. He got benched after 3 carries last week. If he doesn't get traded, he's going to be in a carousel with Boone and Murray. It's just not really a good situation. And as crazy as it sounds, the Jets defense is looking pretty damn solid right now. What they did with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, they held them to a combined fantasy score of 12 points in FPPR. So, guys, looking at Melvin Gordon, I'm with Johnny on this. Definitely quit that shit. All right. My last quit it here is going to be David Montgomery. And they are playing at New England this week. Guys, there's a few reasons for David Montgomery and why I'm quitting him. First is he had 15 carries for 67 yards versus Washington. He only had 67 yards. To put it in perspective, Herbert, who had not even close to as many carries, had 74. In addition, New England has been buttoned up against the run. They are going to force Justin Fields or whoever is at quarterback if Justin Fields can't go to throw the ball. Very similar to what they did against Jacoby Brissett. And we saw what they did against Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. They shut him down. So I do not like that of David Montgomery against New England this week. And again, to mention, Herbert continues to look well, Khalil Herbert. So quitting on Montgomery. All right. Johnny's last quit it is that of CEH, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. There it is. Sirens going off. You know what that means. You need to sell CEH if he scores. Guys, right now he's hovering around a 40% snap share in 5 out of the last 6 games. 5 out of the last 6 games, 40%. He has less than 10 carries, 5 out of 6 games. He had 0 targets last week. And if he doesn't score a touchdown, his volume right now is just too low. By the way, they're playing against an insanely stout defensive front and that of the 49ers. Actually, just defense in general. So for me, I agree with you, John. I am definitely quitting on CEH this week. But more importantly, if he does score, please try to make a move and upgrade your running back or maybe your receiver position by packaging up CEH in another receiver too, or a top flex player that might go off. That way you can really be prepared moving forward for somebody who might get a higher snap share, snap count percentage than what he's currently getting. All right. So those are the hit its and quit its, guys. So really pay attention to those. Plug and play in your lineup as is, and good luck this week. All right. Let's jump into some flex appeal. It's not the same. It's not the same without Johnny. I know. I get it. But I'll tell you what, we got some great content for the flex appeals here. So let's look at last week again from the flex appeal side of things. Johnny, actually, it looks like I had put Rondale Moore as well as Curtis Samuel, both of them combining for 10 points. Curtis Samuel not doing too hot. Johnny went with Allen Lazard and DK Metcalf. Allen Lazard did well alongside Rondale Moore, but DK did not alongside Curtis Samuel. Again, these are flex plays, so 50-50 shots. Let's see if we can help you out this week. All right, so the first flex, there we go, remove that. So the first flex appeal for this week, guys, is that of Travis Etienne versus the New York Giants. Last week, he had 10 carries for 86 yards. He also had 2 receptions on 2 targets for 22 yards, equating to 14 points versus Indy. So I really, really like him against the Giants. The reason being is because I do like the Giants actually defensive front. They've done a fairly good job this year. But I'm seeing an increase in usage in that of Etienne, and on top of it, his receiving ability. So the last 2 weeks, he's outperformed that of J-Rob. Could be a trend moving forward. My other flex appeal is that of Amari Cooper at Baltimore Ravens. So this past week, he had 4 receptions on 12 targets. 12 targets, guys. That's freaking crazy. Okay, so he had 44 yards and a touchdown. So in the last 2 weeks, he's actually had 24 targets. They're playing against a Baltimore defense who has given up quite a bit in the last few weeks to opposing receivers. So for me, I'm willing to take the risk on Amari Cooper in my flex this week, playing against that of Baltimore. Johnny boy. Johnny is flex appeal number 1 is going to be Brandon Ayuk versus the Chiefs. Brandon Ayuk last week, stay in the flames, baby. You were freaking on fire. Touched 2 tutties. He had 8 receptions on 11 targets for 83 yards, 2 tutties. And again, this 49ers will have to pass a lot to keep up with the Chiefs, guys. So I really think they're going to have to utilize that of Debo and Ayuk to the absolute maximum amount, especially with their running back situation being very depleted at this point in time. So Johnny, love the call out with Brandon Ayuk. Johnny's second flex appeal is that of Tony Pollard versus that of the Lions, guys. The Lions, let's just call it what it is. Their offense, explosive as hell. Besides the last game before the bye week, guys, they were literally a top 3 offense in the league, maybe bordering top 2. You know, they had a really shit week heading into the bye week. The problem is the Lions defense is freaking awful. Actually, I'll take it a step further. They are ranked last in rush defense. So with Tony Pollard, I love this play. He's tied for the highest touches last week with 13, with his highest touches, and he will be involved much, much more and should be more efficient, I think, especially with Dak Prescott coming back. So if the Cowboys end up getting out to an early lead, this could be very interesting for Pollard, especially in the flex side of things. All right, guys, that wraps up the flex appeal. Let's dive into crossing the streams.
We'll cross the streams.
Excuse me, Egon. You said crossing the streams was bad.
Cross the streams.
Cross the streams. All right. So last week we did have a few streams and it was really good. They were actually good streams. You know, this is about 4 weeks in a row, guys. So you might want to pay attention to some of these streamers. So last week we went with Daniel Jones, who had 14 points. Good for a stream. Tight end Taysom Hill, he had 5 points. It wasn't his 33, but it wasn't a goose egg. There was a lot of other tight ends that did much worse than that of Taysom Hill. 5 points. And lastly, Philly D versus Dallas. Guys, Philly D is ranked 2nd overall in fantasy. You need to pick them up if you can. But this week, we're focusing on week 7 here. Week 7, streaming options for quarterback. I'm going with my champion, Matt Ryan at Tennessee. Guys, last time he has played Tennessee, he threw 2 touchdowns for 350 plus yards. He's coming off of a massive week this past week, and 2 weeks ago another big week. One in the middle, not so much. But I like this matchup. It is a divisional rival. I really think at Tennessee, Matt Ryan is going to need to throw the ball, especially if Jonathan Taylor's still a little banged up. So I like Matt Ryan for a streaming option this week. From a tight end perspective, I'm going to go with Evan Ingram. So Evan Ingram versus the New York Giants. Giants have given up big plays to opposing tight ends majority of the year. I'm not putting Evan Ingram on the same playing field in no way, shape, or form as Mark Andrews, but Mark Andrews had over 100 yards and a touchdown against that of the Giants. So guys, again, not comparing apples to apples here, but what I'm saying is there is a track record of the Giants giving up big plays to that of tight ends. So it could be an interesting play. And lastly, put my money where my mouth is for defense, guys. I'm going with the Pats defense versus Chicago. I think the Pats defense could score over 12 points this week, which is phenomenal for defense. Shit, I could see them getting a few more sacks with Matthew Judon. I think that their defense is really clicking with what Belichick is doing. In addition, the Bears are just bad. The Bears have not played well, and Justin Fields, God bless his soul, but he's banged up already and heading into a Pats defense that's just salivating, waiting for him to try to throw the ball. So they're looking to stack the box. I really do like the Pats this week. All right, guys. Well, that is the episode. Holy shit. So I hope that you guys find a lot of value from a lot of the things I was able to touch on today. I know it wasn't the same without Johnny, but don't worry about it. We're bringing him back in this following week. And let me tell you, just as another shout out, I want to say some thank yous. Thank you again to all of you. And for those of you that can see me on the video, for those of you listening on Apple, Spotify, Google, genuinely, thank you guys for the support, for the love, for everything that you've done. You have made this so much fun to the point to where Johnny and I are so invested. We're going to try to make this thing something special. So guys, thank you. First and foremost, continue to follow us on social media, on Facebook and Instagram at Frankly Fantasy Football, on Twitter at Frankly Fantasy F, and on YouTube, Frankly Fantasy Football. Please subscribe and smash that bell. Lastly, I want to give a huge thank you to that of Plume. There it is, Plume. To Anthony Sistone for all of the awesome audio clips, the content, the snippets, man. We really appreciate your work. Love your music. Guys, give Plume a shout out. Go follow them on Spotify, Apple Music, and check out their singles. They are tearing up Denver in a psychedelic kind of way. An additional thank you to Liam Hickey for continuously producing this podcast, dude. You are fantastic. Much love. And of course, Jesse Kelsey for continuing the help and advice from the social media perspective. And guys, we love you. So thank you to all of you, and may the fantasy gods shine upon you. Bye.